It is often said that if something can go wrong, one day it will. We need to plan for that day. We need to be ready. Because what you know and do can make a difference.
We have a spill on the north side of the warehouse. We may want a cleanup crew.
Make sure that they...
Emergencies can come at you from any direction at any time. They can stem from natural causes or human error and can include medical emergencies, gas leaks, fires, explosions, hurricanes, floods, even riots and acts of terrorism. The effects of an emergency can be devastating. People can be hurt. Some may die. Your facility can suffer serious physical damage, as can surrounding communities. And even though it wasn't your fault, your company's reputation can be trampled in the process. Of course, we can't prevent every incident, and we can't prepare for all possibilities. But we can plan ahead, so we're ready to tackle most of them. And by being prepared, we'll be able to help minimize any damage. One thing that emergency planning must address is how to prevent the domino effect. When an incident occurs, events often spread from one area to the next, picking up speed as they go. If we're prepared, we can keep problems from growing worse and shut this process down. Planning ahead allows us to act quickly and effectively. To do this, we need to follow the procedures in our facility's emergency plan. Your facility's emergency plan was assembled by your own crisis management team. Members of this team come from a number of different departments. They bring with them an assortment of useful skills and experience. Input may have also been provided by representatives from local emergency response groups like the police and fire department. Your community may also have its own emergency management group that coordinates response operations. If so, they were probably asked to contribute to your emergency plan as well. What these people have in common is that they bring valuable information to the planning process. Information that will help your facility deal with emergencies. The emergency plan that your team has created is a very comprehensive document. It contains information such as the types of emergencies that may arise at your facility, the strategies used to combat these situations, and the names and numbers of facility representatives who should be contacted if an emergency occurs. The plan will also list departments within your facility that can provide emergency assistance and equipment, as well as other facilities and outside groups that might be of help. A detailed description of all facility warning sirens and alarms will be included in the plan. You should know what these sounds mean, so if you hear one, you can take immediate action. Vital information on evacuation routes and procedures will be provided as well. Also listed in the plan are approved procedures for the emergency shutdown of department and facility operations. If you have special skills, such as first aid or CPR, your name may even appear in the plan. These talents can make you very valuable in a crisis. There is one other area that many facilities are starting to address in their emergency plans: the possibility of terrorist activity. To provide some help, OSHA has created several tools that facilities can use as part of the emergency planning process to evaluate whether they are likely to be targets of an attack. First is a list of questions that are designed to evaluate how attractive a target your facility would be to terrorists. Because creating a fire or explosion can be the quickest way for a terrorist to affect a targeted business. The answers to these questions create what is called a fire and explosion planning matrix. In order to use the matrix effectively, you must first assess the risk of a terrorist incident occurring. The level of risk is determined by three things: how vulnerable your facility is to an attack, whether your facility would be a preferred target of an attack, either because of the materials that are being used there or the damage or disruption that could result if an attack was successful, and how serious any damage or disruption would be, not only to your facility, but to the community and other businesses. Risk factors include whether a facility uses, handles, stores, or transports hazardous materials, provides essential services, has a high volume of pedestrian traffic, has limited means of egress, has a high volume of incoming materials, is considered a high-profile site, or is part of the transportation or communication systems. Based on the answers to the questions in the matrix, facilities are classified in one of the 3 risk zones. The green zone includes workplaces that are not likely to be a target for a terrorist incident, either because they have limited vulnerability, the results of an attack wouldn't be particularly damaging, or relatively little damage or disruption would occur if an attack were successful. The yellow zone includes workplaces that may be attractive targets for terrorists because one, but only one of these 3 risk factors is high. The red zone includes workplaces for which 2 or all 3 of the risk factors are high. If your facility is classified as a yellow or red zone location, your emergency plan will need to address what can be done to protect you from an attack. If the facility's risk factors cannot be eliminated, the plan will need to address what should be done in response to an attack. Of course, in order to use your emergency plan effectively, you must take the time to become familiar with it. The best way to really learn about your plan is to put yourself into it. Think ahead. Figure out what you should do in the event of an emergency, how you can help to stop the domino effect from making things worse. Remember to ask yourself what-if questions. What if the valve on tank number 3 blew out? What if a fire spread into our department? These are the same questions that the crisis management team ask themselves when they put your emergency plan together. Asking questions is one of the best ways that we can prepare ourselves to take action in an emergency. It also trains us to spot potential hazards before things become dangerous. For example, a leaking valve or a pile of flammable materials can both be signs of trouble. Maintaining a rigorous preventive maintenance program is an important facet of emergency planning. Keeping things ship-shape can prevent a lot of problems. Be sure to keep accurate records of all repair work. Another thing to remember is that in order for an emergency plan to be effective, its information must be up to date. The crisis management team must be made aware of any physical changes that are made in your department. Expansion, equipment modifications, new roads or rail lines. Things like these can significantly alter how an emergency should be handled. This information is vital to maintaining and executing an effective emergency plan. So it's also important to know the proper channels through which to report these types of changes or any other potential problems. As you can see, a facility's employees are essential partners of the crisis management team. Emergency planning is something that we all need to think about. You know how they say practice makes perfect? This is especially important with emergency planning. Your crisis management team will periodically test your emergency plan in several different ways. They may stage tabletop drills by using diagrams or models to simulate facility disasters. Problems such as a fire spreading to an adjacent department can be introduced to make the emergency more difficult to cope with. Key site personnel as well as people from outside agencies will participate in the drills. This will let them learn more about potential problems that could occur and become familiar with what their role should be if an emergency strikes. And everyone will be able to practice working together. After the dust from the drill is settled, the team will critique how well their strategies worked. Studying how things unfolded will let them determine what parts of the plan may need to be adjusted. But the best way to judge your combat readiness is through a live exercise. Facility-wide drills allow people to physically interact in a setting that closely mirrors a real emergency. Participants get more than a taste of what things would be like. They work on the same kinds of problems found on a tabletop, but they tackle them down in the trenches. At the beginning of the exercise, key personnel report to assigned areas. They are then briefed on the emergency, just as in a real crisis. Fire brigades and emergency response teams are dispatched on rescue missions. Efficient communication between them and others in the facility is crucial. Reporters are often invited to take part, since your communications people will need to know how to deal with the press. You yourself should avoid talking to on-the-scene reporters. They need to get their information from official sources. This will guarantee that only the real story gets out. Rumors can often complicate rescue and firefighting efforts. One of the major benefits of a full-scale exercise is that it shows each of us what our own responsibilities are. For instance, it reminds us that we need to know the locations of alarms and fire extinguishers. In some situations, you may even be called upon to shut down production lines or to cut power to entire work areas. Smaller pieces of equipment and even break room appliances may need to be unplugged. If time permits, you may have to put hazardous materials that you're working with into safety containers and secure storage areas. Windows and doors may need to be shut in order to contain a fire or gas leak. Outer doorways and roads will need to be kept clear so that rescue teams and emergency vehicles will have good access. If a chemical spill is involved, cleanup procedures will need to be instituted. During an exercise, everyone will practice evacuation procedures, including the use of alternate routes when the main ones are blocked. Remember, it's crucial to leave work areas in a quick and orderly fashion. You will also do things like take head counts of evacuees. If someone is missing, the crisis management team may need to order a rescue attempt. On the most basic level, drills and exercises remind us that there's plenty to do in an emergency. So we need to learn to do our part and do it quickly and efficiently. Emergencies almost always catch us by surprise, but if we've done our homework, they don't have to result in disaster. Let's review. Remember that cooperation is the key to creating and executing a successful emergency plan. Communicate on all levels. Compare notes and report situations that could cause an incident. Ask yourself what-if questions. They can help you to identify potential problems. Do preventative maintenance on machinery and systems so that they won't create an emergency. Report any physical changes to your facility that might alter your emergency plan's effectiveness. Know the location of alarms and fire extinguishers, as well as evacuation routes. And above all, take your facility's emergency plan seriously. Be prepared to do your part. In a crisis, you could make a big difference.